Just as a quick reminder, before we get started, I am currently running a giveaway for the Elspeth von Draken key on my ladder on my Discord server. You can find a link down in the description below. It's a LAN battles with caps ladder. Be sure to check that out. If you're not, by the time you're seeing this, there's probably less than 8 hours left in the competition. So be sure to jump on there and try and find some matches if you can. If not, be sure to stay tuned for more. Let's talk a bit about Pestigors. I have to say, the plague goats in hoods are a lot more visually pleasing than I had initially expected. But I haven't really highlighted Pestigors too much because in early access, this Tears of Nurgle ability was broken. It would go off regardless of whenever an enemy unit got close. Now it works as intended. It goes off when an enemy unit within range routes, and it is a chain hex. It doesn't say how many times exactly it spreads, but essentially this is going to allow Pestigors, when a unit breaks near them, to chase and kill them no problem, right? It does give a significant speed debuff and also vigor debuff, so yeah, Pestigor is great for chasing, even like routing cavalry and stuff, honestly, if they can get the jump on them. Of course, they are Beastmen, which means they get Primal Fury and Vanguard deployment, and of course Nurgles, so they get poison. They've also got armor piercing, decent weapon strength, 33 charge bonus with Primal Fury active. Makes them a very solid support, kind of mobile infantry, which is something Nurgle was severely lacking. Today, Pigman's taking his massive Kolek flanking force here. He's got a bunch of Marauder Horsemen, Horse Masters, Rot Knights of his own, including, in particular, the Horsemen of Tzeentch, which are going to be very important here. They do extra damage due to, the Warp Flame contact effect. Just extra 10% damage, which does matter, especially when you combine with the magical attacks. It's going to bypass the physical resistance of Kugath, who is a huge threat, absolutely, for Warriors of Chaos. So between Kolek's anti-large, he's also got a Metal Sorcerer, also of Tzeentch. Very interesting. Not sure why you would take the Tzeentch Sorcerer specifically. Oh, yeah, that's right, because he has Skull of Catan, which is absolutely insanely broken right now. It gives 120% spell mastery, which definitely seems like it's higher than was intended, but that's okay. It is going to be put to good use here by Pigman. He's got Final Transmutation and Searing Doom, looking for some massive damage output from that. Front line already getting into contact. We've got Marauders with great weapons here, and regular Marauders, just an absolute spam of cheap infantry, so no armored infantry for the Pestigors to fight, but they're going to charge in nonetheless in this front line. And that's all well and good. You know, they'll be able to do great in that front line fight. But this massive horde of cavalry and whatnot cresting the hill here. You can see Kolek leading the pack. Absolutely spectacular. The Plague Ogre is going to kind of take a defensive position here. Exalted Plague there. Exalted Plague Bearer, Regiment of Renown. Festering Stooges trying to get in range to throw some grenades to kind of counteract this a little bit, but because they're quite slow, they're going to have a hard time actually loosing too many grenades. They do throw a few there, do some damage. A little bit of Miasma Pestilence as well to try and, I guess, maybe misclick that. I think he meant to go on Kolek, but instead actually accidentally hit those Marauder Horsemen instead. But yeah, you can see all the Marauder Horsemen just pulling up on station, ready to throw javelins at the Plague Father as Kolek charges in. See the Rot Knights charging in here as well, just to interrupt the Festering Stooges. See some AoE damage on them as well, but the Rot Knights charge straight into it. Oh man, just take a nice friendly lightning strike from Kolek there. But looking at the wide view, I mean, no question, the Pestigors are doing great in the front line. In certain instances, they do get overwhelmed. I mean, they are just mid-tier units after all. Not a lot of armor or melee defense there. So they can get overwhelmed fairly quickly, as you see out on that flank, but definitely trading decently in some instances. Also switching back to try and come to Kugath's defense as he gets absolutely mown down by javelins. But Kolek also taking very significant damage here from the Plague Ogres, and the Pestigors also. He might, did get subjected actually to that Tears of the Kingdom. You see how, or Tears of the, not Tears of the Kingdom, that's Legend of Zelda, Tears of Nurgle. You see how slow he is trying to get away. That Tears of Nurgle effect just absolutely, basically pinning him in place. Not quite a hard snare, just about a hard snare. Really impressive stuff, to be honest. And, looking good there. Here comes the Final Transmutation, though. With Skull of Catan, you can see it is damaging the Nurgle Sorcerer, or the Tzeentch Sorcerer, rather. But I believe he did get it off while Skull of Catan was still active. That being said, Didn't do an insane amount of damage. Wasn't actually enough to finish off Kugath, in all honesty. And the Nurglings also swarming through, trying to just screen for him for the time being, as this Marauder Horseman force tries to get close enough to throw jabs. We've got some more Marauder Horsemen collapsing here. Some Pestigors kind of hanging around backline right here. I don't know, this replay... Yeah, I don't think it's desynced at all, but we do see here Pestigors charging on in the front line. Marauders just trying to interrupt them mostly. Basically, the whole idea here is just to throw as many resources in to screen everything so that these guys can keep throwing their jabs at Kugath, but a big terror chain route takes hold, and they are going to suffer pretty badly under that. Another lightning strike from Kolek on some of these infantry will do some. Not going to do a crazy amount of damage, but not actually been able to hit Kugath with that directly, given how big of a target he is, to be honest. But that's just the nature of things. Kolek charging in once more. Has probably not even generated 1,000 damage value. Yeah, Kolek just so sad these days. Very far behind the power curve. Gonna get hit by some more grenades there from the Exalted Plague Bearers. And despite the snipe attempts, Kugath has managed to stay alive. Pestigors trying to use their speed here to try and screen against these horsemen. Hit in on the Marauders as well. Do actually get through the Marauders and charge in on the horsemen. Plague Ogres also fighting back the Rot Knights there. So Nurgle trying to form a little bit of a defensive pocket around Kugath. Granted, a lot of Kugath's value often can come from him fighting in melee and getting that Pestilent Decay drained, so the fact that he really hasn't been able to much this game so far means that likely Kugath is struggling to generate value as well. Yes, that is largely true, but some more Tears of Nurgle going off, this time on something. Nope, actually that was the Pestering Stooges effect. But, yeah, a little miasma of Pestilence on the Rot Knights. Lots of debuffs happening for Nurgle. I guess that is another thing about Pestigors. If they could break stuff, get an extra debuff, get a little bit extra fecundity charges, perhaps. It's Kolek lurking in the back line here, looking to maybe get another charge in on Kugath. The Festering Stooges are going to try and screen for that. All while the Pestigors continue just fighting in the front line. And there's that Tears of Nurgle on those Marauders, which nothing had been allocated necessarily to chase them while they were so slowed, but still, oh, those Rot Knights get absolutely pummeled by the Plague Ogres. Some sickly violence here, as the Rot Knight's betrayal is dealt with most harshly by the Plague Ogres here. Got Marauder Horsemen also having a tough time holding their leadership, but here comes Kolek with the Steel Chair. Gonna pop Star Crusher, Tempest Rage also. I don't remember that one being in multiplayer, but there you go. Pops both of those abilities, drops the Lightning Strike directly on Kolek. Will it be enough? All the Pestigors in here supporting, getting their armor-piercing hits on Kolek as well is actually going to be enough to probably rout him off. Yes, indeed, the Pestigors do finish Kolek there. That being said, the Plague Ogres rushing to support. Kugath desperately trying to curse the leper himself, give himself some extra armor, give himself helps extra healing, but it's not enough. Here comes Demonic Sadness and the javelins of the Horse Masters and Horsemen there, just barely. They were almost out of ammunition for the most part. Another final transmutation, though, from the Sorcerer of Tzeentch probably would have finished things, so with the death of Kugath, things are not looking great for Nurgle, although the balance of power is still pretty decently in their favor. Kolek, rather, super depleted. And there's still some decently healthy Pestigors here. The Plague Ogres also have a decent amount left in the tank, but I guess this one unit of Tzeentch Horsemen does have a good amount of javelins as well. So let's see, they're going to charge on in and immediately pull away. Just try and pull some of these units out of position here. Use those last few pink flaming javelins. Good effect. Plague Ogres getting their armor lowered ever so slightly, that extra weakness to fire. Marauder Horsemen do extra fire damage in melee, so it is kind of nice to have at least one unit with ammunition left. Provide that buff for the other one as they're charging in. Just in general, the Marauder Horsemen in for a tough time. They have to be very patient about how they use their ammo. Looks like the Rot Knights also charging in. Oof, that's pretty clutch. Them coming back from route will be able to help push back the Plague Ogres. And with the Plague Ogres out of the picture, all of a sudden the rest of this infantry looks fairly exposed. Festering Stooges can be tanky in certain circumstances, but I think here there's still enough Javelin Horsemen ammo to give them big problems. They're also bugging out into Dread Column formation, not to mention Kolek himself decided to stick around. He, of course, being mortal, doesn't just die when he routes. And doesn't want to fight those Plague Ogres necessarily, so he is going to pull away there, but... yeah, Pestigors suffering as they are Beastmen. They have Beastmen typical leadership. And again, they're sort of mid-tier Beastmen, but still not the best leadership in the world. Definitely struggling with the loss of their lord. Everything else going on. Pestering Stooges do get their effect popping here. Yep, so they're going to be regenerating now in melee. As long as they continue fighting, but without the Pestigors or any other kind of AP options, they're going to struggle to finish off Kolek here. Yeah, do cause terror right now currently as well, so that is going to be tough for Warriors units to deal with. I don't know, maybe they actually win on leadership here for Kolek. But you've still got the Rod Knights left. The Tzeentch Sorcerer also is probably cooking up at least one or two more Searing Dooms. So it's looking interesting for sure. Got some Javelins into Nurglings there. Has the Plague Ogres try and make a run on the Sorcerer, but the Horsemen are able to screen them out just fine. Now move in to finish the Festering Stooges. Kolek just hangs around, doesn't want to die or get routed off here. So smart play to just keep him near, but not in combat necessarily. Yeah, Festering Stooges making their final stand, but now getting hit from multiple angles. They're pretty much the last thing left on the field, although the Chaos Army, Warriors of Chaos Army, has been extremely beat up. It was ultimately a very close game, but just not quite enough at the end of the day. Big man doing what he needed to prevail, but the Pestigors were definitely a very good component of this build. 101 kills, this one pretty much pays for itself just on raw damage value, and tactically, again, as kind of a support unit, they're great. They're not necessarily meant for frontline combat as much. They're decent flanker and decent AP in you know, certain frontline charges and certain targets, but generally I would say they're a better unit kind of supporting on the flanks against mobile threats or as kind of a gap breaker unit, right, to try and run through a gap and get into a backline. Again, chasing routing units, we saw a little bit there, very good as well. Or even, again, throwing in them as a support against something like a Kolek, right, where if Kolek does route, then their Tears of Nurgle ability will allow other tools to be able to actually finish him off, right, or, you know, not that Nurgle has a lot of shooting, but you can do some things with the various Death's Heads units, or alternately for Beastmen, you know, you've got like Ungor Raiders, or different things you can do to try and punish, or even just freeze units and charge them from multiple directions. This is a more realistic scenario, but fortunately it wasn't quite enough for Kaiju here. It did a decent job, though, and overall, I mean, Pestigors didn't all pay for themselves, but again, they're more of a kind of support unit rather than necessarily a frontline fighter unit. But Plague Ogres also did quite well. Nurglings managed to get a good amount of value. Pestering Stooges also, 1,200 on them, pretty nice. Kugath ultimately just wasn't able to pay for himself, and I think that's why Nurgle lost. It was very close. Had he been able to generate a little bit more value, maybe earlier on in that kind of melee infantry fight, maybe it turns out a little bit differently, but certainly, yeah, value is kind of evenly spread around a lot of these Horsemen and Elites. Kolek not quite paying for himself, but a decent showing nonetheless for the old boy. And the Marauder Horsemen of Tzeentch, super important. Both of them pay for themselves. Regular Marauder Horsemen do a little bit worse, but you can see just kind of the difference that that Mark of Tzeentch makes for them in effectiveness. Horsemaster is also just fantastic here too. I love the pick of the Rot Knights, even if they didn't necessarily pay for themselves also. Marauders, glorified meat shields, they do a decent job though, honestly, quite cost effective. So this is an interesting one, fun one for sure. Pestigors are definitely going to be a solid unit for Nurgle, especially in Domination, where their speed and Vanguard makes them almost essential, like auto-pick, you know, 5 in every matchup, probably. In land battles, I do think that you will see them in certain builds and in certain situations. Definitely, it's a nice tool for Nurgle to have in their toolkit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Everything, yeah, every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified for everything I do. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.